And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. Brought to you by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. I've got two questions for you. Are you unknowingly bankrolling the destruction of American values with every investment that you make? Do you know if your hard-earned investment dollars are being used against the Trump administration's agenda and threatening the very fabric of our great nation? Well, your investment should work as hard as you do and align with what you believe in. So let's build the parallel economy by working with an investment firm composed of professionals who are patriots like you. Have you joined the movement of Americans using their investments to hold companies accountable for their ethical behavior? Take control of the future of America. Let's not get complacent. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review Constitution Wealth's disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. All investing involves risk, of course, including the risk of loss, and I am a client of the firm, so this is a paid endorsement, but my opinions are also my own. All right, coming up on the show today, an interview way overdue. She has become a force of nature the last few years. I had a chance to meet her recently. We spoke at the same event in Ohio, and about the best compliment you can give if you are in the public speaking racket is when you do a multi-speaker event and you take time out of your schedule, you rearrange your schedule to make sure that you can hear another specific speaker. And I did that for Rosaria Butterfield. I wanted to see what she brought to the table for myself, because I've seen a lot of clips the last few years, and boy howdy, she packs a wallop. And I mean that in a good way. And she's going to join us here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, fake news or not. And I think Aaron will probably allude to this in your montage a little bit, maybe. But there's an interesting battle happening in Florida. And we've talked so much, guys, the last few years about how the state of Florida has almost been this like onboarding political science experiment. As Ron DeSantis has essentially attempted to, it's almost like he is literally just going through the list of GOP consultant to do and don'ts over the last 30 years. And it's just making a point out of challenging every last single one of them, right? Well, now he has decided to respond to his legislature going to war with him by going to war against them, and in unprecedented ways. We have never seen a Republican governor put their own legislature on blast the way Ron DeSantis is right now at this moment. And I have an analysis of this that I think could also explain a dilemma that, and Jesse Kelly, I just was on with Jesse on his show late last week. And he expressed an incredible amount of frustration in how Trump still will not expend political capital on intra-party fights within the GOP. And seeing what's happening with Ron DeSantis now, I have a theory as to why that might be the case. Because I know there are people out there that are like, listen, I know Donald Trump tried to put him in prison, and I know they tried to assassinate and kill him twice. And now he's out there fighting all these various battles, but it's all a ruse. You can see that from his endorsements in primaries of rhinos, or the lack of endorsements of based candidates in primaries. He's actually the double agent. Okay, dude, you're scoffing, but this is out there. I mean, there are people with blue check marks saying stuff like this on X on a daily basis. Okay,
completely believe you.
And so, despite the fact the guy missed eternity by a millimeter, happenstance, maybe providential turning of the cheek, symbolically so. Despite all of that, there's this one area where he's not really cashing in his chips, which just seeks to confirm my narrative and my suspicions that he's a double agent and a false flag operation. I mean, this does exist within some segment of the online right, okay, and it's still a portion of this audience. Although I think we've pretty much alienated all those people by now, but there's still some of them. I think maybe we might have discovered the answer to this dilemma. by what's happening in Florida right now. And I'll explain coming up next hour. I'll put myself up on the fake news or not chopping block. And Todd and Aaron, I'll let you guys decide whether or not I'm fake news or not with that analysis. All right?
Yeah.
And an extraordinary event happened this weekend in pop culture. The kind of thing that when you do the math, it just should not happen. Like when I did a local sports talk radio show in Des Moines, I was getting more listeners on a 5,000 watt AM station. I was getting more listeners in the exact same time slot as the 50,000 watt talk station owned by the same company, which is why they eventually moved me to that station. It doesn't matter how good my show is or you thought it was at the time or wasn't for that matter. It's all, an opinion, subjective. The reality is it should be a mathematical impossibility. It should not be possible that a show on a 5,000 watt radio station can outdraw a show on a 50,000 watt radio station because you're just reaching a different critical mass of people with the other than you are with the former. It's just simple math. It's not even a question of quality of programming. There are people out there that just have their own Substack that are a lot better at this than us. No one knows who they are because they're not on a platform like The Blaze. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the old Malcolm Muggeridge thing, the media is the message. Does the message make the platform or does the platform make the message? I think the message used to make the platform and the platform makes the message now. Well, something happened at the box office this past weekend that should be mathematically impossible. And yet it's not. And the only rational explanation we can have for it, dang it, hold on a second. Sorry about that. The only rational explanation we can have is that a historic level of repudiation is occurring. Something that is also something we've never seen in pop culture before. We'll get into that with Pop Culture Tuesday coming up in the next hour of the show as well. I'm going to clear my throat, and here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by another day, more judicial tyranny. A federal judge is trying to block the Trump administration's bid to fire intel agency employees who recently worked on DEI programs. U.S. District Judge Anthony Trenga issued a preliminary injunction yesterday requiring that the affected staffers at the CIA and Office of Director of National Intelligence remain on the payroll while they appeal their terminations and seek reassignment to open positions at their agencies. Federal Judge Edward Chen in California on Monday agreed to delay the Trump administration's move to terminate the Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, programs that currently shields around 350,000 Venezuelan illegals from deportation. Those illegals were given TPS unilaterally by the Biden administration, so the Trump administration unilaterally acted to end that status. Here's Border Czar Tom Homan.
It's another activist judge making a stupid ruling. It just doesn't make sense. I've been around since 1984, Lawrence, and TPS, temporary protected status, is never temporary. And President Trump is going to do his job by the rule of law. The law says temporary status. Once the conditions in that country they're from, once the conditions change, then people should be removed from the United States. It's only a temporary status. For instance, if there's a hurricane and it devastates a part of a country, we'll give them TPS until that country gets back on their feet. But TPS isn't meant to be decades long. So President Trump, who's promised American people, we're going to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and signed by the president. We're going to use the laws of this country to secure the border and enforce our immigration law. That's exactly what we're doing. TPS needs to be temporary in nature. We need to follow the rule of law and not some advice from an activist judge who makes a foolish ruling, not based on law, but based on opinion.
Illegal border crossings in March plummeted to 7,000. That's still way too many. But last year at this time, the number was 137,000, so definitive progress. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says big changes are in the works for fitness standards across the military.
Far too long, we allowed standards to slip, and different standards for men and women in combat arms, MOSs, and jobs. That's not acceptable. We need to have the same standard, male or female, in our combat roles to ensure our men and women who are under our leaders or in those formations have the best possible leaders and the highest possible standards that are not based at all on your sex, if you're a man or a woman. So we're signing this, I'm signing this memorandum today. The services will review, and soon we will have nothing but the highest and equal standards for men and women in combat.
Moving on, you've seen this gal before. Her name is Chase Strangio. She's one of the ACLU attorneys arguing against that Tennessee law that bans meatball surgery and chemical castration. She has some thoughts about things and stuff.
The policies that are claiming that transgender women in sports are men are wrong. The president is lying when he says that there are men impersonating women and participating in women's sports. There are no examples of men impersonating women that I am aware of.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, you sure about that?
你确定吗?
Pop culture news, actress Meryl Streep has been offered to play the role of Muhammad in the upcoming A24 biopic centering on the controversial life of the founder of Islam. April Fools, here's the real story. According to Nexus Point News, actress Meryl Streep has actually been offered to voice the role of Aslan in the upcoming Netflix adaptation of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. And finally, an oldie but a goodie from comedian Theo Vaughn.
About white privilege, and I'm like, fuck, man. Missed that. I mean, I knew some mother with sweaters, okay? Don't get me wrong, you know? But I was 2 tank tops in the winter. And my black friends will get mad at me, man. Like, man, look what you did to us, man. Look what you did to us. Like, bro, do you think I would do all that shit and move right next door, bro? Now, we gonna split these plums or not, man? Fucking, we're down here together, dude. You think I took all your shit and just don't have it? Somebody else has both of our shit. And they're watching us fight over it.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I often wonder when I successfully accessed my white privilege. And was it when my paternal grandfather handed my grandmother a $500 check to have me aborted before I was born? Was that maybe when I had my white privilege when it checked in? Did it come when I was born to a 15-year-old single mom? Was that maybe when my white privilege began? Is that the origin point of it? Could it be the times I remember spending food stamps at the grocery store? Including one time when I tried to put a comic book on the or in the cart, and my mom was like, food stamps aren't paying for that, and I got the money, put it back. So I actually slid it down my pants. True story. I took that comic book and I slid it down my pants and walked out with it. My mom, in one of the greatest acts of motherhood in American history, took that comic book when she found it in the parking lot as we were walking out, took that comic book, rolled it up, and beat my rear end with it right there in the parking lot, and then made me take it back and return it. That's how I remember it. How many more times do you think I tried to, sneak comic books down my pants after that moment, do you think, by the way?
I knew I loved your mother, but Mama, Deace.
That happened.
Sky high.
That absolutely happened.
High.
She rolled that thing up and then whipped my behind with it right there in the parking lot of the grocery store. And I had to go back in there, little plump 4-year-old, 5-year-old Stevie, waddle back in there and return it and say I was sorry. Okay.
God bless that.
That's why I've not forgotten it. That happened. Okay. Was that my white privilege? Did it click in there, do you think? Or all the times we moved, we had to call the cops on my stepdad because he was drunk or high and being abusive again. Was that the cops only came to our house maybe because we were white, perhaps? I mean, that's where the white privilege, you think? White privileged engaged. Was it then?
They've come to my house too, so maybe I'm really privileged.
I'm trying to think as I go through, was it the time they threw me out of university because I didn't go to a class the entire semester? If there was ever a place, you would think, where white privilege would go your way and they would just bring you in like that classic Eddie Murphy SNL skit from when we were kids, where he gets in white makeup and goes down the street and people just give him free stuff because he's white. Remember that skit?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So if there was ever a time like they called me into the registrar's office, Mr. Deace, and of course they spoke like white people do in rap albums, like their butts are really tight. Yes, Mr. Deace, you did not attend a class all semester, but we're white, so you're good here. No, they threw me out, and I had to My mom also told me when I moved out, the door didn't swing both ways, so I had to rent out a guy's duplex. I took the basement. It was infested with ants. I worked at Manpower, and it wasn't a gay bar. It was a temp agency. So I'm trying to think of here when exactly this white privilege that I've heard so much about, when it finally clicked in for me, when it finally engaged for me. Because what I kind of found, my wife has threatened to write an autobiography about her life with me titled "I Married a Mailroom Clerk," because it's true, that's what she married. So I'm trying to figure out, when did this white privilege happen exactly, pinpointing it myself. And, here's the weird thing. I think I figured it out now that we're going through this. Thank you to Theo Vaughn for the inspiration. By the way, I got to say this. I didn't know what a Theo Vaughn was 6 months ago. Remember when I came in here and said, you guys knew who Theo Vaughn is? Trump's on his podcast. Never heard the name in my life. Had no clue. Didn't know what Andrew Schultz was? No clue. Right? So what's funny is I watched on YouTube like 2 weeks ago. I think I texted you guys about this at the time after I watched it. Theo Vaughn did like a 30-minute interview on why we needed to ban porn on his YouTube channel. I watched like the entire thing. I thought it was an incredible interview. So props to him for that. But here's what as I retrace the steps of my life, I think I figured out when my white privilege, guys, kicked in. And it just so happened to kick in right about the time, follow me now, that I grew up, realized the world owed me jack squat and nothing. That there is a God who put talent and abilities within me. It is my responsibility to seek out the opportunities by which to maximize those. Okay? And then lo and behold, when I accepted those parameters of my existence, things just began to work out for me. We used to just call that meritocracy. Now it's called white privilege. So there's that. But I want to get back to a topic that I am on a bender about right now, and I will continue to be. What's happening in America, and this has been going on, by the way, for decades. But what you're seeing play out now in real time, in maybe the most vivid fashion, because of what's at stake and who's president right now. But you're watching nothing less, and I'll say it again, nothing less than a judicial coup is taking place. And if you want to put down a populist uprising, you use assets you have that are not directly accountable to the people. And this is what happened in the first term. You take unelected intelligence community bureaucrats, perpetual security nanny staters with never-ending security clearances decades past their usefulness, and you make them a direct conduit as a leak for a leakocracy between an independent counsel's office and the media. And you use their titles of defense expert, intelligence expert, war hero, etc., to give credibility to a media that has absolutely none. And you just conduct this never-ending leakocracy for years. And it'd still be going, but it was shut down. See, there's a lesson there. Evil doesn't stop itself. It always has to be stopped. Then after that, almost a year to the day of when the Attorney General, Bill Barr, in his literal only act of usefulness ever, ended the independent counsel probe and thus shut down the Russia collusion scam. Almost a year to the day is when the scamdemic began. And now you use more unelected bureaucrats with even more credibility. Public health officials. And they now become a conduit to the media with no credibility to gaslight and brainwash the people because of their credentialism. Now, in that case, Trump puckered, frankly, did nothing, surrendered to it. He initially tried to push back. We had that montage in the overtime yesterday, but eventually he just, probably at that stage of his presidency, looking back on it now, was basically punched out. And just essentially said to Fauci and BIRCH, you guys take it from here, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. They'll tell you what to do. Lose. And lose he did. Now you're watching another spate of unelected bureaucrats do the same. And these unelected bureaucrats, by the way, have even more credibility than the intelligence community once did and the public health sector officials once did. Because for decades, whenever we have heard the term, the courts have spoken, we have assumed the position. Let's take a look at some of the greatest, I guess we'll call them victories of the spirit of the age, of the modern left over the last 60 years. You're going to find they all seemingly have one thing in common. taking prayer and God out of schools. A lot of people think that's a genesis point and a tipping point for what's happened to American culture since then. Well, why did that happen? Was that a policy from the Department of Education? No, the Department of Education actually would not exist for almost 20 more years. No, it was a Supreme Court opinion, Engel versus Vitale, that did this. And took what we now know as the Lemon Test and basically applied it comprehensively. Anything that is not based in secularism, which does not exist because someone will always rule and something will always be worshipped. There's no such thing as secularism. But anything that is not inherently secular, government, therefore, it violates the Establishment Clause. Something apparently no previous iteration and generation of Americans realized until about 1963 when that opinion came down. How about mass infanticide? Think that would have passed by national referendum in 1972, 1973, Todd?
Not a chance.
Think a critical mass of states would have put that into the U.S. Constitution in 1972 or 73?
No way.
No way. So they had to have the courts do that as well, Roe versus Wade. Let's go to the 1980s. How about the 1980s? This idea that illegal aliens have rights to your money, that they have some, the Constitution is the United Federation of Planets, the interplanetary Constitution, not the United States Constitution. Where did this come from? Came from a Supreme Court case, Plyler versus Doe. That's the origin story, just like all various abortion opinions have their origin in Roe v. Wade. All opinions giving illegal aliens most favored nation status start with Plyler versus Doe. Is that something that the people would have voted for in the mid to late 1980s?
Nope.
Think they'd even vote for it right now?
Nope.
Nope. They didn't get to vote on that. The courts have spoken. Let's fast forward maybe another decade or two. This idea, you've been fighting this battle in our own state over the last year plus. Bunch of people in Northwest Iowa, hardy, most red part of our entire state traditionally, fighting to save their farms and their private property for the progress of a private energy co-op. That now we can eminent domain your property for other private industries that the government deems are just more valuable than you and call it economic development. Think that's something the American people would have voted for on a ballot?
Oh, they're pretty cranky about it right now.
Yeah, I think that's something anybody could have gotten elected to national office running openly on. That's my key plank in my platform. No. That's why they had to also impose it via the courts, Kelo versus New London. Otherwise, it would have never happened. Let's look at gay marriage. Windsor versus U.S., Obergefell versus Hodges. I was involved in those fights in the pre-Windsor era, so I know them very well. We won 31 consecutive referendums on the definition of marriage, 31 in a row, including getting over 8 million votes in support of us in California on the same day Barack Obama got 60% of the popular vote in the state.
Didn't even it pass in Oregon, or am I mistaken?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we won 31 in a row. 31 in a row, all over the country. It's debatable whether it would happen now because the numbers on gay marriage are declining as we speak in real time. But it's possible it could pass now. It's possible it could. Would it have passed in 2013? No, it would not have. That's why they had to use the courts again and kick off unprecedented assaults against religious liberty in American history to boot. See a trend line there? Do you see a trend line there? The rainbow jihad. Why you're putting up with this clown show on CNN claiming, I'm not impersonating a woman. And nobody is. You can blame that all on Windsor and Obergefell. Blame it all on them. That's the legitimacy point of all of that. Infanticide, tax subsidies. In fact, you can pretty much blame every Democrat majority in the Congress in the last 50 years on Roe. Because you know what the number one bundler has been for the Democratic Party for the last 50 years? The abortion industry and movement has been the number one bundler for Democratic candidates for 50 years. So every single time you got a Speaker Pelosi, a Speaker Foley, you can blame Roe v. Wade for that every single time. Because the abortionists, the baby killers, are the biggest bundlers the Democrats have had until now. The rainbow jihad is now. That's why if you're black, by the way, that's why you're back in the back of the bus, baby. And if you're Hispanic, you ain't even on it. Okay, you're not even on the bus. All right? because the rainbow jihad is now. They cut the biggest checks now. But for 50 years, the baby killers did. And so you can blame every single Republican majority or Democratic majority for that. Then you can blame every single Republican majority for continuing to fund them on top of what they were already getting in the first place from Democrats. All of this has its origin in the courts, folks. The amount of political capital, the left would have been lucky to win one of these via the traditional political process. And probably that would have been the only one it could have won, because the amount of look at the amount of political capital that had to be expended to end slavery in America. The amount of political capital and resources. Look what happened after they passed Obamacare legislatively. Democratic Party lost over 1,000 elections nationwide, federal, state, and local in the next 3 cycles. Just to have won one of these the traditional way would have the reverb on that, the blowback on that would have been catastrophic, let alone to win them all. Win them all? They won them all because they got to impose them all. And there's a group on the right that want to continue this because it feeds their grift. I can promise you can trace every failure of the American right back to the fact somebody's gravy train on our side gets in the way of actually winning this war. Except now the entire Trump presidency is at stake. So FedSoc's going to have to come up with other reasons for their banquets and their membership fees. Because just like the unelected intelligence community and the unelected public health sector stillborned Trump's first term, the judicial coup is going to stillborn the second. Unfortunately, there are an upteen amount of remedies the Constitution specifically provides for the Congress to do something about this. We can't even get this Congress to show up to work. We can't even get this Congress to actually show up to vote when it's supposed to work. So we're left back where we started. Unless Trump and his administration does it, nothing good gets done. It's not fair. It sucks to put everything on one singular person, even in the best of times, particularly when they keep trying to kill. But we are where we are. He didn't have to come out of retirement and run for the position again. He chose to. So he put on his big boy pants, right? Okay. Yeah. So buckle up. Buckle up, Mr. Trump. You're going to have to play Abe Lincoln in this play. Teddy Roosevelt's lasting political legacy is that he came out of retirement to stop the right wing of the Republican Party and hand a presidential election to Woodrow Wilson, which was another inflection origin point for almost all of the rot gut we face today. He is the Benjamin Franklin of the progressive left. Well, Trump's lasting legacy could very well be, and Teddy Roosevelt still made it on Mount Rushmore somehow, despite that. And what did Teddy Roosevelt get for that, by the way? They took him out of the Museum of Natural History because he's a racist now, of course. Trump's lasting legacy will have to be that he gave the power back to the people the courts robbed from them for the last 60 years. Or if that's not his lasting legacy, this term will fail. They will not stop what they're doing until they are stopped. And there's really only one place we can go with hope to stop them. And it's the Trump White House. They're going to have to stop this. Otherwise, your vote will be nullified. We just staved off cultural execution in this last election. It's not fair. It's not fun. Oh, well, it's where we are. It's where we are. And in between the chuckle huts and the memes, and I got to admit, I'm starting to enjoy them now myself. All right. But in between and in the midst of all of that, we're playing a game for real stakes here. Nothing less than existence as we've known it. Venezuelan drug lords have more of a right to step on the soil of America than an unborn baby whose cuticle is dangling out of its mother's womb right before it leaves the birth canal. We cannot sustain a civilization on that. And there is one branch imposing it, and they must be stopped. And it will take the executive branch led by Donald Trump to do it. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, and as I said at the top of the show, about the best compliment you can give someone who is a fellow racketeer in the public speaking racket is when you are traveling and you arrange your schedule. If you're speaking at the same event as they are, you arrange your schedule to make sure that you are there to hear them speak, and they speak hours before you do. And I did that at a recent conference in Toledo, Ohio, that I spoke at called Dangerous Friends, because I'd heard so much about our next guest. I'd seen several clips go viral over the last few years, and I wanted to see for myself. And boy, howdy, I did. I mean, she packs a wallop. Her name is Rosaria Butterfield. She joins us now here on The Blaze, and it is a pleasure to see you again, Rosaria. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Oh, Steve, it's an honor to be here. It's great to see you.
So let's just start with your story. Just kind of take a couple of minutes, your story and how you ended up here. I mean, you just look like you just look like the picture of Grace, you know, mom of adult children, grandmother that, you know, I mean, when we grew up watching Folgers commercials when we were kids, we wanted to come home from college. All right. And the mom we all wanted and the grandma we introduced our babies to, you are the picture of it. Right. OK. And then you open your mouth. OK. And literal swords, bombs and sabers come forth. OK. How did this happen? Tell our audience.
In 2 minutes.
Yes, if you don't mind. Yes.
No, not at all. Well, it's funny that you should mention that, because actually, 30 some years ago, my job was to make homosexuality look wholesome. So I was an out lesbian feminist activist professor at Syracuse University. I was tenured as part of the first crop of tenured radicals. My field is 19th century British literature and culture. That would mean that my worldview, backdrop would be Freud, Hegel, Marx, and Darwin. I was a gay rights activist. I was in serially monogamous lesbian relationships. And after I had written my book that really sort of solidified tenure for me, I was really just interested in why people like you and you all and your listeners, and now the person I've become, wouldn't leave people like the person I used to be alone. Mm-hmm. In other words, like, what is it about evangelicals? Why can't they just leave consenting adults alone? And of course, 30 years ago, that was, that sounds very quaint, right? Because now we're dealing with, the social invention of the trans child. So to say leaving consenting adults alone, that sounds like something David French could get behind, right? So, yeah. So I don't know. My problem, Steve, is that I was radically converted because the Lord had put a pastor in my life who is also a neighbor. His name was Ken Smith. I had written an article in the local newspaper condemning the Promise Keepers, which I know you have some affinity for them, right? So here we are. And one of the elders in the Syracuse Reformed Presbyterian Church put that article on Ken Smith's desk and said, "We've got to shut this woman up. She's real trouble." And I was real trouble. I had co-written the domestic partnership policy at Syracuse, which was a forerunner for gay marriage. I testified before the legislature in New York. That was back in the day when the gay rights movement put like PhDs and doctors, people who knew how to tuck their shirts in and complete their sentences in front of the cameras and not, what you see today. Mm-hmm. So that really, I was genuinely a true believer before I was a true believer. And it was truly Pastor Ken Smith, who was willing to sit down with me. And quite frankly, I thought he was my unpaid research assistant for this book. I was genuinely interested why people believe these crazy things. And I did realize as an English professor, I needed to read the Bible in order to get there, in order to understand these things. And so in the process of 2 years of reading the Bible and turning the pages of my heart over with the pages of Scripture, I did come to the realization that if this is true, I want this. And if this is true, then I'm actually not a gay person, because there's no such thing as a gay person. There's certainly gay sex, there's gay sin, there's gay, there's a gay Kroger where I used to live. But it's not a personhood issue. That from the scripture's perspective, homosexuality is found in the flesh, it is forbidden in the law of God, and it is overcome in the Savior. And when I committed my life to Jesus, I wasn't quite sure where all of this was going to go, because I was at that point tenured in a number of things, including queer theory. But I was confident of this, that the Lord who could move mountains could change my affections if that's what he wanted to do. And so I became somewhat of a public spectacle, really, on my university campus, because I was quite a beloved lesbian professor. And now I had a very public conversion, and I had a church that helped me every step of the way. But they didn't tell me that I just needed to go live a nice, quiet Christian life. Having been a lesbian activist, now I needed to be a pietistic Christian. They didn't tell me that. And they did prepare me for war. And so the Lord answered my prayers. The Lord changed the affections of my heart. You met my husband, Kent, at the conference. I have been biblically married for almost as long as I have been a Christian. Gosh, I wonder if that has anything to do with why, I'm no longer gay. I don't know. Go figure. And I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to use mocking derision, but I am trying to say boldly that the social movement of LGBT rights has morphed into the reigning idol of our day. And part of how that happened is the church was naive and careless and fearful. And so since the gay rights machine is the machine I helped make, I am very happy to use my, my aged, wholesome, whatever you want to call it, persona, to help tear it down. Because one of the things I have noticed is that I'm a housewife. I don't have a job to lose. Often I get to go say things that other people don't. And so far, I'm still alive, right? You saw me at a conference.
I can verify that, yes. Yeah.
So anyway, the Lord is good, and Christians ought to be public. They ought to bring their faith into the common streets, into the world. And I would say part of the problem is that the carnal Christianity of the 70s has become the corporate Christianity of today, and the gravy train just has created too many, charlatan, false teachers, and wolves, all of whom I am delighted to name by name, because how else are you going to cite your sources? How else are you going to warn the parents whose children have been abducted by these, by these charlatans, if you don't name names?
I mean, you're only giving, people their due credit. Right. I mean, if you're building a brand, I mean, you're giving them, a brand recognition. They should be in favor of that, so to speak, in some regards. If you could talk to someone in this audience right now, I get these notes a lot. I've got a kid who is caught into the trans cult. I don't know what to do. My church, it's a great church, but I just found out we're bringing Preston Sprinkle in to speak. Okay. I'm going my wife left me for someone of the same gender. My husband left me for someone of the same gender. The courts want to give us co-equal, rights to the children. And so what do we do with these two great belief systems? Okay. These sorts of moral quandaries that are unique to this era. Okay. Yes. And every era has them in the past. Okay. Right. We could have, if they had podcasting in the 1840s, we could have talked about what the idolatry of slavery has done to divide the church and divide the families and divide the communities of America. This kind of silent sin that we all know systemically is bad, but few of us will speak up against, right? I mean, every era comes with its unique challenges. This is the unique challenge of this era. So given your experience on both sides of this battle, what would you say to people as just general pieces of counsel to get started if those are the conflicts they find themselves in?
Right. And just also the appendix of the last book I wrote is all about this. It's simply questions that have come into my website that I answer for people. And this is extremely hard because people are experiencing this sense that their church betrayed them, the legal system has betrayed them. Certainly, the public school system has betrayed them. And one of the first things that you need to do when all of this happens is you need to stop pretending that you can change your very nice church from the pews. You can't. So I would say the first thing that a believer, a Christian person who feels betrayed by culture, church, your child has been abducted by the transgender madness, that conveyor belt that has become the public schools, the first thing you need to do is you need to face the situation quite squarely and quite honestly and stop pretending that the church you're going to is fine, that Christianity Today defends your rights and loves you, that, David French from the New York Times really knows what you should do about Transgender Story Hour. You need to really be sober about this. If you are not in a solid church, a church that professes the clear truth of Scripture, you need to get to one fast. You need to assemble hundreds of your praying friends. You need to pull your child out of government school, which is hard, almost impossible to do in a divorce situation, but it is not impossible. And there are Christian schools, Christian school principals that will help you. And I've got some ideas for you, but you need to stop positioning yourself in this way that would suggest that if only you're nicer, if only you're more winsome, if only you would just kind of nod and smile to the powers that be. Absolutely not. That is not true. That will not help you. That's like being in a rowboat in a tempestuous storm using your toothbrush as an oar. You've got to ditch that. And so I would say to a Christian, get to a good church, a real church. Assemble praying friends. Get to know ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. Throw away your subscription to Christianity Today, and know that John 8:31-32 is absolutely true. Abide in the truth, and the truth will set you free. It will be a long haul, but that child you're worried about, that's a prayed for child. That's not just any old child, and the Lord is not done with you or your child yet. But to have the faith that we see in Hebrews 11 does require a great deal of fortitude, sacrifice, and courage. And what you need to do is get around people who are exuding that. Now, Preston Sprinkle is a wolf. He's a wolf and he's a heretic. And you know what? If he repents of the sin of all of his books and ideas, and I will be the first to welcome him to my Thanksgiving dinner table. But he is not a pastor. He runs a quote unquote ministry assembled by a board that works for him. Parachurch ministries are quite rife with the problems that you've been talking about. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say.
I think it's interesting that you gave counsel in terms of just general war preparation as opposed to a specific plan of attack, because the plan of attack could be altered based on relationship dynamics, period of time, the state you even live in, and what laws are and are not on the books, right? That there's just ultimately, just like our own soldiers have to have a general preparedness for battle. And then when a particular threat looms and presents itself, the mission may actually vary depending on who that threat is and then how they evolve. But there's a general preparedness. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would add to that if you don't think this is war, then you're going to be, you're dead. You're not in any place to be of any help. It is war, and LGBTQ, along with other aspects of the sexual revolution, including abortion rights, are the reigning idol of our day. Yep. You don't destroy an idol. You don't take Moloch away by taking the ears off. You've got to take the whole thing, and idols must be destroyed, and the word of God must be proclaimed. So those are the two things. And we can be joyful warriors about it, but we're not dupes and we're not idiots. And we're not afraid to take the heat. We're not afraid to stand in the battle and say, no, Christianity today is no longer Christian. It might be again someday, but it's not. No, government schools are not even protecting your parental rights. The only constituency in a government school that has First Amendment rights are the students. Goodness gracious, what are we talking about? So to not see this clearly would be a terrible thing. That would be a terrible thing.
Folks, you're just getting a preview of what I heard about an hour of in Ohio a few weeks ago, and it left an impact on me, and I hear this stuff all the time. So I'd urge you to check out her website. You can follow all of her work, learn more about her writings, where she's speaking around the country. Just go to our website, rosariobutterfield.com. Is that okay? Is that where you want me to direct people?
Yep.
All right, rosariobutterfield.com is where you want to go, rosariobutterfield.com. And Rosaria, it was just... it's been a pleasure connecting with you, and I'm hoping this won't be the first time we do this. All right, thank you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, what do you think?
What an absolute delight. I remember we listened to like 10-minute speech from her and did it for an overtime in the past or something like that. I'll tell you what, folks, listen, all of this ridiculous squabbling that goes on between Catholics and Protestants currently, it's because of women like that I think it's utterly ridiculous. We put it aside. Steve, I don't even recall what you said, what tribe she's from or anything like that. But you just heard as grand a hermeneutic on faith without works is dead. That we all can agree upon, must agree upon, according to her. There's no time for the sidelines. There's no time for anonymity. This is war. War demands we have a plan and we execute it in the flesh. Here, it's not a meditation. We must do. We must do. We must do. And I, as a Catholic, was deeply inspired by what I just heard. Thank you, Rosaria, for your witness. It is breathtaking. Sorry, Aaron.
The God who can move mountains can change my affection. That's something that you just heard her say. She just trusted God in her conversion. That's not just for sexual deviancy or sexual sin. That is in all affections that we have that come before the true affection for our Maker. Those who have ears to hear.
Hour 2 is next. All right, we're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel. We're having to start all over there. At Deace Show on YouTube. At Deace Show on YouTube. As we're trying to get around censorship, so that we can at least have some form of representation on the largest video search engine on planet Earth. It's truly remarkable, the level of audience that we have been able to build on this show with zero help. I mean, it's remarkable. In fact, you know what? It's providential, because it doesn't make any sense. If anybody wanted to start in this business and get to where we ultimately are right now, the path of how to get there, Aaron, you know more about these numbers than I do, so let me make sure I'm not speaking out of turn here, okay? But the path to getting to a place in your career where we are now, with literally zero help from Facebook, which is the #1 aggregator of our kind of content of any platform in America, zero help from YouTube, which is the #1 video search engine on planet Earth, and getting zero help, by the way, that would actually be an upgrade. That would at least give us a shot. We're not only getting zero help from the algorithms, they're crushing us. They're crushing us. It is remarkable. It is providential. Am I speaking out of school here, Aaron? Is that pretty accurate?
No, I was just checking to see. So we use this tool to help us see what our search engine optimization score is.
Meaning your wording should work, and getting boosting is what it's saying.
For the last year, so 92 out of 100 points yesterday.
That's pretty good.
The day before that, this takes a while to come up. The day before that, 91 out of 100 points. No, 96 out of 100 points.
That's very good.
The day before that, optimized score, and this is, I'm just giving you 92 out of 100. I'm just giving you 3 examples, the last 3 shows. I've been very diligent over a year now, making sure our SEO is maximized to the T. We have 12,000 subscribers on our new channel. So just leaving us alone and letting us grow organically would be a boost. They won't even do that. There's no way you could build anything like what we have been able to build without the help of Facebook and YouTube. So there's only one explanation for it: providence. Because that math's not supposed to work out. All right, so you could help us. Just keep subscribing to that channel on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it, at Deace Show. Also, if you follow the podcast version of the program, thank you for that. Leave us a 5-star review. In fact, now is a great time to do that. As I've been mentioning, we are placing our show for now. I don't know how long for now is. Might be next week. Might be next year. Might be never. I don't know. But for now. For now, we are placing our show in the religion and spirituality category. Why? Because, as the great Augustine once said, there are many sheep without, many more wolves within. All right, just to go to what you heard from Rosaria a few minutes ago. There aren't a lot of the kinds of churches adequately preparing our people for the battle that is here. And this is how you end up with MAGA out in front of the church and confronting moral crises of the era. And that's just, it's not sustainable for the health of any culture, for any form of a political movement to be in front of the church in a moral battle. That's just, you might have a moment where you need that right now, and we have that moment, but it'll be just a moment. It won't be a sustainable movement. So we're trying to see if we can just pick up some stragglers, man, people that don't know any different, and they've just worked their way down the same old of soft-headedness and click on us almost by accident. All right. So if you guys could leave us 5-star reviews now, if you haven't before, hit subscribe, or on iTunes follow. That will trigger the algorithm in our favor and help them find more people that are stuck in the kinds of churches inviting Preston Sprinkle to come and speak. And if you want just a quick biography of Preston Sprinkle, Rob Bell. He's on the Rob Bell story arc. And it will end the same way that Rob Bell's did, minus the repentance that Rosaria described. He'll either repent in recognition that he was a false teacher, just not intentionally so, or he is intentionally the camel's nose under the tent, and he's just on the Rob Bell story arc. That's all. All right. And so there are many sheep without, many more wolves within. So we are trying to reach as many people as we can, because we specifically have got to, I know this sounds weird, disciple the church. Okay. We have got to do that. Otherwise, there's no long-term hope for this culture. So thank you for you guys doing that for us during this particular period of time. We appreciate that. And we also appreciate our friends that make this show possible for us, like our friends at Fast Growing Trees. Did you know they've got the biggest online nursery in the United States right now? Thousands, in fact, over 6,000 plants to fit any space, from indoor plants to fruit trees to full-sized privacy trees and more. Their 14-point quality checklist ensures that you're going to get the best quality plants possible. And here's the thing, if you know nothing about this, like me, for example, this is where I noticed when I have purchased from them in the past and used their website, because that almost seems like analyzing is paralyzing, as the great Keith Jackson used to say. How could I possibly go through 6,000 samples, before it becomes white noise? They make it very accessible, very understandable to narrow it down to your specific needs. They also give you support from their trained plant experts. They're on call to help you plan your landscape, choose the right plants, the right climate for you, and how to use them. And the other thing, too, is this stuff gets delivered right to your door. So instead of, putting the seats back in the minivan, and then all that dirt and everything else is back there, you got to clean up afterwards, it
just gets delivered right to your door. So they've got the best deals for your yard this spring, up to half off on select plants and other deals. But our listeners and viewers, you can get an additional 15% off your first purchase by using the code DACE at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the code DACE at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code DACE, fastgrowingtrees.com, code DACE for the discount. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, let's get to some fake news or not. And we always think it is important for us to hold ourselves to the same standards of accountability by which we hold others, right? That's also a thing in Christianity, by the way. So to that end, I have a hypothesis I want to present that might be approaching full-fledged analysis. And it's in response to something I saw yesterday from the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Watch this.
The Florida House of Representatives has a Republican supermajority. And what are they spending their time doing? Well, they are hearing in a committee a bill about carbon sequestration, potentially injecting carbon into our soil, aquifer, and even our ocean floor. Carbon sequestration is a scam. It's part of climate ideology, and it should not be in law in the state of Florida. Certainly should not be the work of a Republican supermajority. There are so many things that Floridians want to see get done, everything ranging from property tax relief to voter freedom. Don't indulge the left with carbon sequestration.
So this is the latest in media events or clips and videos specifically targeted at his legislature. There has been a battle pretty much since the start of this year between the Florida legislature and Governor Ron DeSantis. And we've talked about it a little bit. It's very clear, as I've said when we've discussed it previously, gentlemen, the Florida legislature, I mean, this is the Republican Party of Rick Scott and Jeb Bush. And that's how you lose to... well, Steve, you backed Rick Scott for Senate Majority Leader. You're right, I did, which tells you how bad I think Mitch McConnell is if you got me to back Rick Scott. Can I get an amen on that? Okay. We went, because from traitor to useless is a huge upgrade. What did I just say about social media? If they actually just left us alone, we would grow more. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we would grow more organically. We got more than 12,000 people, guys, downloading this show every day. Otherwise, we wouldn't have just gotten a 3-year contract extension. And that's all the subscribers that the largest video platform on the planet says we can muster. If they just left us alone, guys, so we could just take 1-to-1 this audience, which many of them have YouTube access, if not accounts. If we just they just stopped crushing us and let us 1-to-1 try to take our own audience and convert them to YouTube subscribers, think we'd have a lot more than 12,000?
We would.
We'd have a lot more than 12,000. So neutrality, uselessness, is an upgrade over treachery. You bet Rick Scott was an upgrade over ditch. Give me useless. Give me a guy that will do absolutely nothing for me at all over the guy that is literally figuring out new ways to knife me, shoot me in the back for pleasure and sport. Now, that useless Florida Republican Party that thought the Gang of Eight Marco Rubio was basically a John Birch Society member. That's how you almost lose a governor's race to a guy that, was literally doing cocaine off the backside of a homosexual hooker. That's how Barack Obama wins your state twice. That's how you're the state that gave the... Notice, guys, DeSantis even freaking cured Florida Man. When was the last time you saw Florida Man trending anywhere, guys? You know what I'm saying? Florida Man was like a thing. You don't even hear about Florida Man now.
Now he's door knocking, handing out pamphlets.
Yes, now he jumps out of Scott Pressler's Hyundai. All right, knocks doors in Pennsylvania. That's what he does now. Okay.
Scared straight.
Yes. We don't even get Florida Man. He even took that away from us. For goodness sakes, man. All right. And so we have this legislature here that they didn't want to do much of this stuff of the last few years. But he had leverage. He could get reelected. He was more popular than them. And he could get them reelected and even many more of them. And he did. Well, now he can't run again. So since the start of this year, the Florida legislature has been trying to reassert itself. The dog has been trying to return to its own vomit. And there have been, some back and forths. There was this subtle, well, maybe Casey DeSantis will run for governor to kind of, dangle some remaining leverage out there because they're trying to relegate him to lame duck status. Now it is looking increasingly likely that Casey DeSantis is going to run for governor. On purpose, I've not asked anybody in the governor's office, I know, let alone the governor and the first lady themselves. That way I don't have to even risk betraying a confidence by knowing something I'm not supposed to know. I don't know. I'm just pretty confident in my analysis that she's going to end up running. That's not any inside word, just my own thought. So I could continue to think independently. I've not asked. In response to the increasing likelihood that Casey DeSantis is going to run, the legislature has now declared all-out war against DeSantis in an effort basically to drag him into a urination contest and in the hopes that maybe they can take his favorables down just enough that it gives somebody else a chance to win the nomination for governor. Now, I will tell you, my buddy Chip Roy speaks very highly of Byron Donalds. And on like every fight that Chip's ever tried to enlist in over the last 2 years, Byron Donalds has pretty much stood up with him. So I don't know necessarily why they think that about Byron Donalds. It might just be because they know DeSantis won't cut him a deal on anything. It might be the reverse of what I just said about Rick Scott and Mitch McConnell. They've got 6 years of proof of concept. DeSantis will give us nothing and make us suffer. We know this. Maybe if Byron Donalds gives us 10 or 20% of what we want, that's 200% more than we were going to get from DeSantis. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It might be they're doing the same math I just did on McConnell and Scott. It's just in reverse. It might be that the old Florida GOP would have done whatever they could to knife Byron Donalds too, but considering what they already know DeSantis will do to them, they'll take their chances here. You know what I mean? Yep. It might just be that, okay? So don't take this as a knock on Byron Donalds. I don't know him at all. And all I know about him is, on a personal level, is he got a pretty strong endorsement about a year ago when I asked about him from Chip Roy when I asked. So now you have DeSantis taking the extraordinary step of going right at his own legislature. Now, our governor did this privately last cycle. She did not get the school choice bill she wanted, waited for the session to end, and then later that summer in the primary cycle went after the Republicans on the committee that would not give her the school choice bill, took him out. And we thought that was an extraordinary thing to see when that happened in Iowa, right? Yeah. Very next session, she got one of her biggest victories, school choice. This takes it even further, what DeSantis is doing. I mean, he is literally, that's like a Steve Day show, call your legislature right now and get them, he's putting people on blast. We've never seen anything like this. Daniel, in fact, I saw this clip because Daniel Horowitz sent this to me yesterday in one of our private communication chains. He's like, have you seen, he's like, I've never seen a governor do what he's doing here. I'm like, I've never seen this either. Will it work? I don't know, because we've never seen anything like this. It may work. It may not. But here, in the meantime, while we're waiting to see if this will work, and the DeSantis era in Florida has been like a real-time political science class. We have seen him violate basically every maxim and motto of the GOP consultancy industry for the last generation, much to his great success in the state of Florida's. But now you are seeing the Republican machine strike back. You're seeing the Republican machine say, we've done enough now for your culture war. We've got some grift and gravy train to cash in on here. Thank you, though. Thanks, Ron. And here's your, here's your gold watch. Enjoy retirement. And you can go play more golf with Trump if you want. Oh, you're going to run Casey to basically start a dynasty on us? Drop a dynasty on us? Well, then we are going to take this. We're going to drag you down to the minutia here now, so that doesn't happen. That's what's going on. I don't know.
We will pump all the carbon into the ground.
Correct. I don't know if I don't know I mean, we've never seen a governor do, particularly one that is term limited out of office. We've never seen a governor do what Ron DeSantis is trying to do in his legislature right now. And Ron DeSantis still has an approval rating that's like 56 or 57%, which is extraordinary. Given the amount of war he's waged, that's incredible. So I don't know. I don't live there. I'm not on the ground there all the time. I don't know if it'll work. We're going to watch how it plays out in real time. That's not why I'm bringing it up in fake news or not. I'm bringing it up for this reason. Late last week, I was on with Jesse Kelly on his show. And he asked me a point-blank question. He said, Steve, help me understand why the Trump administration is having all this success everywhere else and is now still endorsing Lindsey Graham again. I'm scared to death they're going to endorse John Cornyn in my home state of Texas. Why doesn't he expend any political... Why is he so bad on intra-party stuff, but we're going to primary Massey and Chip Roy? Why are we not spending any political capital here? Is it possible? Because one of the common theories you see, particularly on righty political X, is that despite being nearly imprisoned and assassinated, Trump is a double agent of the system, and every one of his rhino endorsements verifies my narrative from 2016 that I just demand holding on to until the bitter end, or no matter what other truth is presented to me. I mean, that's just stupid. If Trump's a double agent, he's the dumbest one of all time. Not to mention who tries to assassinate their double agents. If that's your theory, you're about the dumbest theorist of all time. But admittedly, there is a disconnect here. We recognize this, right?
Yeah.
It's not like if Donald Trump just decided, hey, that guy over there, that guy that just dropped your mail off there in Greenville, how'd you like to be the new senator from South Carolina? It's not like that guy would like literally not be the next U.S. senator from South Carolina if Trump wanted to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So then why doesn't he? I wonder this, and you guys tell me if I'm fake news or not. I wonder if a guy that understands leverage, his entire career has been about leverage in Donald Trump's case, if he thinks there is a better likelihood that he will at least get something. I mean, he did get cover from Lindsey Graham when Trump threw Zelensky out of the White House. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Lindsey Graham has done everything for Zelensky other than swipe right. Was there anything left to do?
Are you sure that he hasn't?
And we're not even sure he hasn't done that. I mean, I think we all know that Lindsey's probably got quite the robust collection of Vladimir Zelensky belly dancing videos. Can I get a witness on that? All right. So short of swiping right, I don't know what else Lindsey Graham could do for Vlad Zelensky over the last few years. He hasn't already. Okay. And yet, Lindsey did show up outside the White House after Trump threw him out of the White House and blamed the whole thing on Vlad. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Is it possible that Trump has done this math and made the determination that he is better off, given the time is a thing they're not making any more of? He's term limited too, despite his current trolls to the contrary. He's also not getting any younger. He's going to turn 79 this year. All right. Is it possible he's just done the math and thought, these fools in the end just want a letterhead, a position. I'll get him to do a handful of things for me that I need done, and I'll save my political capital for other places rather than here. Does that possibly answer the distinction and the dilemma that Jesse communicated to me on his show last week? And also then call into question, can you be successful? DeSantis is going, it looks like, just like he's done many times in his career already, DeSantis is going to do what people like me and shows like this have wanted a Republican to do forever. He's going to do it again. It may not work. It may not work. Many of those people that he's trying to move in the legislature, they're going to be in that office way after he's gone. They might be able to wait him out. They might be able to say, we've given you enough. We don't have to give you anymore. We don't care what your freaking name is. We'll just wait you out. You're a lame duck. And if you try to run your wife, we'll just knife her. We'll suicide bomb this thing. This has happened in the Republican Party before. I mentioned Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was very concerned. He was a progressive, just a different kind than Woodrow Wilson. But he was very progressive about Taft and the right wing of the Republican Party taking over. Very concerned that they would be more isolationist. I mean, many of the same arguments you're hearing today. Many of the exact same arguments you're hearing today. So what did Teddy Roosevelt do? Came out of retirement, formed a third party called the Bull Moose. Complete suicide squad mission. Just completely kamikazed the Republican Party so Woodrow Wilson could win. It's not there is a history and a pattern of this. How many times have you seen multiple conservative candidates mysteriously appear against a rhino incumbent? And you can't ever talk 2 or 3 out of them ever dropping out, so they split all the vote and the rhino wins. How many times have you done that show over the years? Have you guys listened to it? Hundreds? Is it possible Trump has just done the math and said, there are just certain nuisances I'm going to have to put up with here? And Lindsay, in the end, just wants a male intern pool of consenting young adults and to be on TV. And for that, a handful of times a year, I rattle my zipper and he shows up and does what I want him to do on camera. And so we'll just call it a day and back to where the real war is at. Is that possibly the math that Trump has done here? And we're waiting to see if it can be done a different way. And DeSantis is going to prove it to us one way or another in real time here in the next few months. Thoughts?
I think it's likely that is the math. If you, in my mind, add one additional piece of analysis to it, and it's the once bitten, twice shy version. You know how, I mean, I think you too, Steve, will attest that when it comes to the main themes of Protestant history, Protestant denominations, current day arguments, I'm in the know. But quite often, I have to come to you guys to like, okay, we're in the weeds now. Can you help me figure this out? Well, remember, and I've said this before, I think the degree to which Donald Trump felt bitten by the likes and the weakness and what he views as the betrayal of Mike Pence is that extra a bit of analysis that tacks onto this, because you mentioned why do you primary all of these guys? Chip Roy, Thomas Massey, they're not Mike Pence. But I don't think Donald Trump is really that nuanced on this. I think he lumps these guys
as people that won't do what I want whenever I need someone to do whatever I want.
True believers who really aren't
and the
there
Lindsey
for
Grahams
him in
will.
the end. Yes. And so I think he just, now after what happened to him, he throws a lot of this. As soon as he starts feeling a Mike Pence spidey sense at all, he's out.
Yep.
So that's what I would add to it, but it's why I buy into what you're saying.
All right. Interesting. Aaron, so nice analog you added there. What do you think, Aaron?
This is absolutely a possibility, because I think anybody who's spent more than 5 minutes watching a Republican Congress at any point over the last 20 years, much less, or even more so, over the last 40 years or so, can probably come to the pretty quick conclusion that they're pretty much good for nothing. So that there's that. So you have to be careful, because it's not like we're just talking about 1 or 2 or 3 different positions of leverage over a legislative body, or at least a legislative body, whether it's in the House or in the Senate. We're talking about hundreds of different. Yeah, I mean, I bring this analysis, and I'm giving Donald Trump maximum benefit of the doubt and respect, really, because leading a coalition government, he's herding cats constantly. He himself, personally, I have to believe, is herding cats constantly. So I think it could very well be his math that, by and large, for right now, it's not really worth the political capital to try to reform Congress, because that's a generational thing. There's 2 things that I think need to happen here, though, and I think one of them already maybe has happened, but we'll start with the second thing. At some point, however, with all that being said, you're going to have to, if you ever want to have a chance at reforming Congress, at least half of it, the Republican side of it, I'm talking about in both houses, you're going to have to make at least one example out of somebody at some point along the way. I really do believe that. So if, again, we're talking about legacy here, he's going to have to provide leverage in a way that that really makes in no uncertain terms clear that you just cannot cross this line of whatever ideology, whether it's America First or whatever. You cannot cross the line and expect there to be no consequences. So he's going to have to confront Congress at some point, Republicans. The second thing, I think what we saw maybe play out in the continuing resolution fake fight. There, again, I don't like 4D chess, and I don't even think it's necessarily rises to the level of 4D chess. But they did have leverage over the Democrats in a couple of specific ways. And we talked about this at the time. We had Chris Bedford, our DC correspondent, come on at the time. Democrats were in the position where they either shut the government down and gave even more power to Donald Trump, who they were trying to, and complaining about was wielding power like a dictator, as their rogue judges tried to stop him at every step of the way. They were forced between that choice or acquiescing and backing down to Trump and passing the continuing resolution. It could very well be that they were being set up there. So it's heads I win, tails you lose when it comes to Trump and Congress. It could very well be that they see that they actually have more leverage because of the way that this Congress is formed with very slim majorities in both houses. You've set the precedent with the Democrats that they will back down. So next time we have a budget fight, next time we have a fight over a bill, you've already set the precedent that you're going to back down. So it could just be that they're trying to exercise leverage in that manner as well. Some derivation of that. So again, Congress, very, very difficult behemoth to take on. I still believe Donald Trump needs to make an example out of somebody at some point. Mm-hmm. And number two, I think that they do recognize and are actually using the leverage that they do have over the Democrats in some effective way. I think that's a possibility too.
Mm-hmm. Scenario. Trump makes it an eminent part of his administration to defy the courts, as I am suggesting. Several of the Republican rhinos, even John Cornyn included, and John Cornyn taking pictures of himself on Twitter reading Trump's books, okay? These people are just complete and totally feckless schleps. These are the kinds of Republicans, though, that usually go to the media to betray people like us. So Trump defies the courts, which we think is required to save his presidency. He gets John Cornyn and Lindsey Graham types to go on Face the Nation and these other shows that nobody watches, but Trump cares greatly about for reasons, probably because that's generational for him, okay? And give him cover. Does the math check out? It was worth it then? You see what I'm saying? Rather than turning on him? See, those are the things we don't know yet, right? So I think we need to let this stuff play out. Like we need to let Florida play out a little bit longer. We need to let this play out a little bit longer too. Those are, I think, realistic scenarios that could happen, or it could just be what always happens and we just get screwed. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we've got tariff wars, recession fears, stubborn inflation. I mean, Trump has fought. There's clips going back 40 years where he has had the same consistent message on trade policy. So it's very clear he has decided he's going to expend a good deal of his political capital fulfilling his analysis, his generational analysis of this. And that's what he got elected to do, and that's great. But it's not like these other countries are all just going to just roll over after getting a sweetheart deal from the U.S. for a generation and say, by golly, you're right. Time to make this fair. So there's going to be some disruption, right? That's why you still see gold routinely hitting all-time highs. And in volatile markets like right now, don't sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. Take control, safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to BIRCH Gold Group. They've helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. It might be time for you to hedge against economic stability with gold. You can learn more about how to do that and how to put your physical gold in a tax-sheltered account by texting Steve to 989-898. When you do that, BIRCH Gold, they're going to send you a free, no-obligation kit. Again, text my name, Steve, to the number 898-989-898. Text Steve to 989-898. And BIRCH Gold's got an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews. All right, so you can trust them. Text Steve to 989-898 today. So let's get to Pop Culture Tuesday, shall we? Where we look at the intersection between what's trending in pop culture and what it is that we're battling, fighting, and hoping to, inspiring to conserve as conservatives. Something happened this weekend at the box office that should have not occurred. It's impossible unless there's a massive paradigm shift. It just can't happen. And when you talk about great IPs in pop culture history, I know Steamboat Willie and Mickey Mouse are considered the foundation of Disney's empire. And certainly those are the OG caricatures. But Snow White was the first big hit for Disney. It made Disney a force of nature in the culture. If there was ever a bulletproof property, something you would have to try, and I mean go out of your way to ruin, it would be that. And yet it's already been chronicled, the underperformance of Snow White, the controversies with Rachel Zegler, her commentary, where she is essentially a woke caricature of every annoying theater kid ever. That's all been well documented, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that this film is on its way to being maybe the worst flop in Disney history. And you've heard me refer to this in the past. Let me quantify this once more. The Black Cauldron in 1985 was the first and last box office flop Disney ever had. Until the last 4 years, they've had 5. At least 5. Counting Marvel and Pixar under the Disney brand, they've had at least 5 films, Snow White being the 5th, that will be flops. So we kind of know this. We talk about this a lot on the right, what's happened to Disney. You want to talk about suicide missions I was mentioning last segment. This has been a suicide mission for a corporation, what they've done. But if you need one final piece of confirmation that a paradigm shift is taking place here, and that it's not that Disney is uniquely being mismanaged, it's on the wrong end of a zeitgeist. The kind of zeitgeist that it used to be trusted to form. But just like the media, the universities, almost every other public institution we have, we don't trust those things anymore. I think I mentioned to you guys before the show, I was stunned at how many positive emails I got about my St. Petersburg Accord monologue yesterday. And what did I say to you, Todd? I'm not sure how many people really yet agree with what I was saying, but just agreed with the fact I was challenging a conventional wisdom, because people want essentially everything challenged right now.
That is key to your analysis. Just
challenge everything. Just we've got so many. See, this is why, by the way. I mean, I disagree with Tucker on the Jew stuff. But why don't I spend a lot of time harping on him about that? Because the same inclination that's causing him to question those things, it's what's causing him to put Mary Talley Bowden on his show the other day. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Again, Aaron, what did you just say about Webben and those guys? Do they put our teeth on edge at times? Yeah. But after spending 20 years trying to get the church to wake up, are we suddenly in the mood to say, but not like that?
No.
Simmer down. I think I'm going to let things play out a little bit before we get to that point. I don't think we're in any danger right now. Some individuals may be making clowns out of themselves, and they'll have to pay the price for that later. But collectively, I don't think we're in any danger right now of literally overreacting to anything. Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. We're not in danger of overreacting to like literally anything. Okay? When in doubt, overreact. It's pretty much that should be your default in this era. If you're unsure, overreact. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. And then we'll figure out how to rein it in a little bit later on if we have to. But start with overreacting. Okay? All right. So like I told you guys, I'm not sure how many people really thought that's actually really smart realpolitik, as opposed to, you know what? Thank you for challenging yet another conventionalism. Just keep them coming. We just don't trust anything. It's the era in which we live. And Disney's caught in this. But it's not a uniquely Disney problem. Something broader is happening. Snow White was a flop in and of itself. But something happened at the box office this weekend that should not have happened. Mathematically, it's impossible. And I gave you guys the analogy. One of the reasons they moved me from my sports talk show to the news talk show that ended up helping to launch my broader career is I was getting more listeners on a 5,000 watt radio station during the same time slot than the 50,000 watt radio station was. That just should not happen. It doesn't matter how good you think I am, how good you think I'm not. How good you think the other side is, how good they're, it can't happen. It's a 50,000 watt radio station. I'm on a 5,000 watt radio station. Meaning something is systemically wrong if that happens. A paradigm shift is needed. Radio management recognized that, eventually moved me to the 50,000 watt radio station, and here I am today. So I told you guys last year, maybe the most cathartic experience I had in the theaters is when I went and saw The Beekeeper with Jason Statham. If you haven't seen the film, mild spoiler alert, he essentially just kills the entire Clinton Foundation. I mean, that's not even an exaggeration of the plot. It's not even a mild tongue-in-cheek. It's not even mild. Corrupt U.S. Senator, female from New York, becomes president, okay, has an entire corrupt grift foundation beneath her. Does it ring a bell? Is this on? McFly? Anybody home? He literally just kills the entire Clinton Foundation. That's all he does. Just kills the entire, makes his way up the entire flow chart and kills the entire Clinton Foundation. I walked out of there, man, even before I started 75 Hard. I thought maybe I'd lost 30 pounds just watching that film. I mean, I said to Amy, stop by Quick Trip on the way home. I'm going to need a pack of Marlboros. Okay. That's what that, did I say it was a great movie? It's not a great movie. It's not a great movie. But it was necessary. All right. It's not a great movie, but it was a necessary one. Okay. Whew. I walked out of like Ric Flair. Woo! That's how I walked out of the theater after watching that. So his new one is out now, and this one's written by Sylvester Stallone. It's called The Working Man. And in this case, he just goes after the entire corrupt elite machine, from local politicians to the cops to mobsters, everybody involved in aiding and abetting and looking the other way where human trafficking is concerned. And he does this. He's got this, Americana, Hispanic, second-generation immigrant family that started their own construction company and, very patriotic family. And the daughter gets kidnapped, and no one will help her. So they call in Jason Statham, David Harbour, who pretends to be like this huge lefty writing notes for the Palestinian people. The role he plays in this film, I mean, he's essentially... like an Alex Jones P1. And he plays it unironically. Like his heart's really in this. Okay. Blinded in the Iraq War. Okay. He's got his own private armory. He's off the grid. Okay. He's the one who essentially, decks out Jason Statham to go to war,
David Harbour.
Yeah.
Big lip.
Yeah. I'd say yes. 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 That's the role he plays in this film. Yeah. He's the Alex Jones P1, man. That's what he is. Okay. I'm not making any of this up. All right. And all Statham does in this film, it's impossible to give spoilers because you know how it's going to go. Mm-hmm. Statham just assassinates the entire human trafficking infrastructure of the city of, follow me now, Chicago. The city of Chicago. Where the cops are corrupt, the government's corrupt. They all enable this and look the other way. It's so bad that the mob eventually says, we're just going to let this go. We can't afford to keep fighting this guy. He's killing too many of our people. We'll just let this one go. This movie is very rated R. It is revenge porn, literally. I mean, that's what it is. Well, revenge is not the right word. How about retribution porn? It's retribution porn. The killing is in very graphic detail. It beat Snow White at the box office last week. It should not happen. Doesn't matter how bad Snow White is. It doesn't matter. It's still called Snow White. It's open to all audiences. It doesn't limit itself with its rating. It still has a very powerful, potent IP. It's on more screens. It's only in its second week. This isn't like Snow White's been in theaters for 6 weeks, it's about to go digital. No, it's in its second week. An R-rated film with a very niche message and no A-list actor. I mean, I like Jason Statham. He's not Mr. A-list. Beat Snow White on less screens with not even half of the audience potential given the rating. And it's not just that it was a rated R film, but the message of that rated R film. It's called A Working Man, written by Trump fan Sylvester Stallone, who over the course of 40 years has been an on-again, off-again right-winger. It kind of goes by decade, 70s left-winger, 80s right-winger, 90s left-winger. It's every other decade. Sylvester Stallone just kind of switches which side he's on. All right. Kevin Costner's the same way. All right. Depends on the decade, whether they're right-wingers or left-wingers. All right. Costner's back to doing shows for Fox Nation again. Okay. So he's a right-winger again. But this is for a very niche audience. Snow White was made for every audience. And this film beat it at the box office. It should not happen. The math is impossible. With one exception, a massive paradigm shift is underway. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
I'm glad you said underway, because that would be my the completion matters. And along the lines of what Jonathan Kahn said, if you cast out the demons and then let them back in, they come back 70-fold. Here's what, if politics is truly downstream from culture, as we say, and this is my big lament with the Avengers movies ultimately, and all the superhero movies, if you've given up on woke, God bless you. But if moving on only means escape and not action, then you're playing with fire.
Well, Jason Statham takes plenty of action.
But this is my point. So do the superheroes.
Yeah.
And then we clap like trained seals and give them all of our money, and then we go into real life and we do what? We watch as they trans our children. I resent the hell out of that, which is why I deal with it the way I do in my social media account. By all means, go watch in
other words, it's unlike when we watched Hoosiers as kids, and then we were like, all right, we're going to go play basketball now. Or we watched Rocky as kids, and we're like, we're going to go pretend box out in the yard afterwards, right?
And so Statham's doing what he's doing. You can't go take over your school board? You have to stay anonymous on Twitter for reasons? No. You don't get to escape. You're a man. Being a man is not a leisure pursuit. Don't just go to the movies. Go out and really kick somebody's ass.
Aaron, what do you think?
Well, so this is the second weekend of Snow White or third weekend? Second weekend?
Yep.
That's incredible. That is absolutely nuts. So yeah, a paradigm shift is happening because it seems like in the past it would take a few weeks to percolate, or it might not even percolate at all. It would just be right-wing bubbles talking about, hey, this actress in this upcoming movie said something that is salacious, disagreeable, just outright evil, what have you. But it kind of seems like that would stick to our own bubble. I don't think that bubble's necessarily there anymore. Because, what was it, Beauty and the Beast? Pretty well, good performing film. Even Lion King, it performed pretty well. Snow White.
Even the second Lion King has performed very well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot there was another one.
Yeah.
Snow White.
The OG.
And you're telling me it's getting kicked out by Jason Statham in the second weekend in theaters?
Yes.
That tells you that there's not a bubble anymore, at least not the way that we've come to think of it. That these messages and news and the way that it's being presented is penetrating the normies in a way that we didn't think was maybe even possible 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, which we weren't even having these types of conversations 15 years ago. So yeah, something is changing at a breakneck speed.
Well, let's face it, though. If that, as I understand it, the movie it doesn't respect the source material at all. It turns us into some kind of communist manifesto sort of thing. But had it not been for how long? Like a year and a half long ramp up of Insufferable. Let's say we were just hearing about. We never really heard much from her, but the movie was just as bad, and we started to hear rumblings maybe a month in advance.
That's a good point. How long would that take that word of mouth to percolate?
Yeah. See, it takes.
Yeah.
We were just exhausted and beaten over
So
the
you
head
agree with
this.
Aaron's point that these things aren't in silos or bubbles anymore? Is that her woke proto-evangelism of the film, Rachel's, nuked this movie, is what you're saying, because you agree then with Aaron's
for
analysis.
a very long time. I just we need to be it doesn't need we don't need to let it get to that level of insufferable where we're saying no, you're not going to disrespect me by turning Snow White. I've heard it, I'm not going to it, instead of being stuck on nostalgia switch all the time.
Well, we're out of time. Aaron, you and I, because Todd, you're off for the rest of the week.
And thank you for that.
You're very welcome. You and I are going to stick around and carry this on in the overtime, because we may be seeing the same thing with another sacred property in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So we're going to talk about that in the overtime for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.